aspect. I wanted to be that hot commodity that everyone needed at that time, right? And exactly, Trina, you hit the spot. I would say yes to things that I didn't necessarily want to do, but I wanted to feel that need. I wanted to feel that people needed me all the time, right? Similar to Optimus Prime or, Jason or Tommy from the Power Rangers or Leonardo, because I wanted to be that guy. And that was necessarily, like, again, that was my defense mechanism. I'd always just say yes to everything in that sense, just to make sure that I was always looked at in a bright light more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Did that make it better?
It made it better for a while. And then when you come to the realization that people are using you, people are just looking at you for something quick more than actually valuing who you are as an individual, and things just started crashing down.
Today, I'd like to welcome our guest, Mujahid Hemani. Thank you for coming and joining us today, Mujahid. And then what I liked hearing about his story is I just met him briefly before he came into recording. And one of the things that sticks out for me in hearing his story is really how he's come to incorporate mindset and discover what really aligns for him in his life, and looking at it through a process of evaluating what to say yes to, and the power of inviting what to say yes to in your life, and how that actually helps contribute into feeling more self-worth, value, and also having a harmonious relationship with others you intersect with in your lives, maybe personal, professional, because not knowing when to say no is sometimes a very big challenging thing that a lot of us face. And one of the things that I really loved, and I know we're going to learn a lot from speaking with you, is not only what to say yes to and evaluating that, but the power of also going back to things you love, things that nurture yourself, that even if no one else in the world is interested in it, that's okay. If it serves a purpose for you and is of interest to you, there's value to that. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
So before we get started, you've maybe had some time to see our presentations, our previous episodes, and I'd love to hear from your vantage point, from your perspective. What do you think of what we do, and what do you see it as? How do you see it?
Well, I think it's weird. Like, you think when watching it, you're getting people at the most vulnerable point and discussing major things. But when you go look at the flip side of things, people are not necessarily vulnerable when they're speaking with you guys. They're more so like really happy to open up about certain things that have happened, certain things that they've been going through, and things that they're actually doing right now. So that's what I really appreciate, even how you guys are even asking the questions. Like, sometimes it's like really hard hitting. It could be a loaded question, but people seem to be open about everything that they're talking about to you guys, which is awesome.
How do you find, if in any way, that it would benefit a viewer, or what sort of value have you seen in it from what you've heard so far?
Well, my personal background, like being like from an immigrant family, we're always told like there's certain things that we're not allowed to talk about, right? There's certain things that you don't necessarily bring up. So the fact of the matter is, like, more often or not, people are bringing up certain things that people always had thought about, but never really talked about or never really explored. And the fact of the matter is that you're able to hear people speak about things that you can only think of. And you're like, wow, I wasn't the only person going through this. Yeah. Or wow, there's someone else out there that's thinking the exact same way as me. Or wow, I can relate to something, or I can look up to someone that possibly can even help me benefit or help me with my struggles as well, just by hearing someone else's story.
Was there anything specific that you saw, that you looked at and thought, wow?
I think it was Moaz's interview with you guys when he was talking about his stuttering, right? That really, like, considering, like, I've known Moaz for such a long time, and it's so funny. I never like realized he had that stutter, personally speaking. And it's so funny that when he's mentioning it and the struggles he struggles that he thought he was talking about, I never realized that. I've also have other relatives that have, yeah, I have other relatives that have a even more prominent stutter, and for them, I always try to be more encouraging, but I never really asked what's your struggles or anything like that too. Maybe because it was just me trying to be as helpful as possible, when even just asking how are you feeling about it could be more helpful than trying to cover it up or just telling them push forward, don't worry. It could have just been, I could have put myself in a better position for them or with them in that regard.
So that's interesting, that it actually gives you insights and ideas on how to actually make change.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and so in terms of your own self, like, I've like I said, I've known you for a number of years. We've crossed paths probably in other areas of, whether it's community work that you do, that we've run into. You've always been in that sort of realm, and when I think of you, I think of a guy who's always been this, outgoing guy, leader. These words kind of all come to mind. You have an award named after you in your high school. Like you're prominent. You've done some great things in a very short amount of time. You've found yourself to the front of the pack, even though you are number 2 child. Okay, so there you are. You're accomplished. You got grit. You're successful on so many levels. So that's just kind of like how I've known you on the outside. And what I find is that that's often the case with a lot of people. You see the part above the water, the iceberg, and then there's the rest of the most of the iceberg, which we don't see. And so I really appreciate you coming out today with us and having this conversation with us about what others haven't seen. And do you feel though that by, looking at having that type of conversation, that there's going to be things that, wow, like, I don't know, man, if I want people knowing this about me or that I had this feeling, how do you feel about getting into a conversation like that?
It's funny because, as you grow up, sometimes you might revert to a childhood trauma or a childhood memory, which makes you go back to that sensation that necessarily might not like when you were growing up, but it's bound to happen because I think like life is a full cycle. I remember going through struggles as a kid, just trying to find out who I am as an individual. And then a little bit actually happening again now in my older age, right? That are people really seeing me for me again or not, right? Have I just created this whole facade about myself, right? So growing up, again, I've always been on the heavier side of the spectrum. So a lot of people dismissed me for that reason. I never used to be more talkative. I used to be more the quiet child growing up. I always never really look up to like, this is going to be weird saying human beings in regards to like role models. I always wanted to be Optimus Prime in the Transformers. I always wanted to be Tommy and Jason from Power Rangers. I always wanted to be Leonardo in the leadership role that he did in the Ninja Turtles. Like those were my inspirations growing up, right? So it's weird, like but that was just me. That was my interest growing up. So I knew at some point, I'm not too sure if there was a switch. I'm not too sure what it was in my brain that goes, how do I be the person that stops going to people for help all the time? And how am I going to help myself get to a position where I want to be? Right. And
so do you think that it started maybe by, I mean, when you say that they weren't humans, the thing that comes to my mind is that you were living in a fantasy, man. And
I'm a huge daydreamer. I'll tell you that much.
so people who fantasize, right, just by calling it a fantasy, accept that it's a detachment from reality.
Yep.
And so, was there a part of you that felt that this is just a fantasy, that this is never going to be? I can look up to Leonardo, and I want to be that guy, but I'm on the bigger end of the spectrum, like you just said, and that's not going to happen because guys like us, we don't get there. That's just good for fantasy. You ever had that feeling?
Yeah, I did. And you know what? I would say it was watching Power Rangers for me. I'm a huge Power Ranger nut. I still watch Power Rangers till this day because I love it. Like, forget about the people say the violence aspect of it, but it really goes to show like struggles that people have growing up. It talked about individual stories. It talked about overcoming adversities. It talked about those things, and those things. I look at it this way: if something I can relate to more and learn from it better, why not follow that route than having someone talk to me all they want, but it's not getting through to me at the
So, like,
same
were there
time.
qualities that those characters had that you like, that you identified with, that you?
Yeah, it really, like, okay, if you guys do know Power Ranger history, you know, like, one of the characters, Tommy, he was like the evil Green Ranger and became good, right? And for me, I resonated with that because I was always angry as a child. I was always that person who always had a problem. I had asthma. I couldn't run as fast as the other person. Again, I was on the bigger side of the spectrum. I was the second child. And in an extended household, I was kind of the middle child. So I always felt forgotten. I always felt displaced. And to see someone go through that adversity, feeling the same way I did, and at the end of the day, coming out at the better end, why can't that also happen for me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And again, when you go to see all these pop culture or, you know, cartoon shows, it's to inspire kids and to help them realize that we all have the potential to be great, but it's up to you to actually start doing it, right? And it's so funny because now in my older age, you see so many things on social media about like self-help on how to be a better person, how to do this better, on how to do that better. But they always tell you, but it has to be upon you to get up and go start doing it. How do you go ahead and start doing those type of things? Right.
Well,
And that's when I started doing that at a younger age.
but when you were a younger kid, you weren't reading self-help books.
No, exactly. I only had Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles to rely on at that point.
Yeah. So you got this. You can look at, you know, a Ninja Turtle, and I think I agree with you. I think that's why there are stories like that and shows like that and cartoons like that, whatever, series like that. That's why they're out there, right? They're there to give, you know, kids or the kid in us, whatever you want to call it, you know, a way to sort of look at it, even though it's fictional.
Yep.
Right. And then we start looking at how we can take it from fiction and fantasy and be inspired to then make it a reality for ourselves. But, you know, when you first start looking and having those thoughts, it's nice because you have that. How long was the show? Like half an hour, right? These cartoons
Yeah.
are half an hour at a time. So there, for half an hour, you feel good because you're that you can sort of live vicariously through that Ninja Turtle, right? And you're part of that story. You feel like you're relating to that. But then the show's over and you go back to reality, you know, and you're still, you know, not the fastest. You still have asthma. You're still number 2 in the extended family. You're still all these things. The world hasn't really changed, nor have you.
For me, that's when like everything kind of hits you, right? You're right. Like your half hour of being in this fantasy world is over. Now back to reality. So now I had to figure out ways how to make my reality, not necessarily a fantasy, but how to make my reality enjoyable, right? It's like, you know, when you go on a vacation, but it's raining all weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to have a crappy time, you're going to have a crappy time thinking, well, it's raining. What do I do? And I always used to say this, like later on, like once I realized, like, you have to make it your own. Go out in the rain, have some fun. There's nothing wrong with taking a hike in the rain. It's actually even more peaceful, more enjoyable. You might get some great photos that way. There's nothing wrong with, you know, cozying up near a campfire if that's what your vacation is, and while it's raining, like, there's nothing wrong with those type of things. It's mindset at the end of the day. So yeah, I knew that in that half hour time being in that fantasy, how do I take that enjoyment and consistently keep it in my reality? And it's all on how I, you know, approach things, right? For the first time, if I had an opinion on something, I should actually voice my opinion and taking that risk and putting myself out there more than anything else.
And so I was just about to ask you about that. So you started forming, strategies or starting, tactics on starting to make your reality enjoyable. And as you started doing that, obviously now you're tinkering with the environment and the ecosystem, and the ecosystem and environments that we're all a part of have defense mechanisms to maintain the status quo.
Yep. My defense mechanism was always I was always the yes man. It's so funny that you bring that up. And I was always the yes man. Because again, I went from an angry kid to realize that I have to make my own reality better. And my defense mechanism to make sure that I always stay above or idolized was always to say yes to everything that I was told.
Give an example that you can share.
It could be if I was interested in something and my parents said, well, we need help to do this, or you have to be there that weekend for a certain family event that necessarily I didn't have to be there, but I would just always say yes. Are you available this weekend, even though I had plans?
You're not saying
Pardon me?
no to your parents. You're not saying
no, I'm not saying say no to your parents, but it's the small examples. Like if I had plans with someone else already, but I felt another person was like, oh, I really could use someone to talk to. It's like, okay, I'll cancel those plans and hang out with you. Or it's weird to bring up examples like on the spot like that but again, I was the yes guy. I was always looking at
what I'm saying is, even if you didn't want to do it, you still did it because you wanted to show up for people, and
exactly.
Then you're not showing up for yourself is what.
So that made you more valuable to them.
Yeah, again, it was to look at valuable aspect. I wanted to be that hot commodity that everyone needed at that time, right? And exactly, you hit the spot. I would say yes to things that I didn't necessarily want to do, but I wanted to feel that need. I wanted to feel that people needed me all the time, right? Similar to Optimus Prime or, Jason or Tommy from the Power Rangers or Leonardo, because I wanted to be that guy. And that was necessarily like, again, that was my defense mechanism. I'd always just say yes to everything in that sense, just to make sure that I was always looked at in a bright light more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make it better?
It made it better for a while. And then when you come to the realization that people are using you, people are just looking at you for something quick more than actually valuing who you are as an individual, and things just started crashing down, right? Like, again, I had a really good conversation with a teacher of mine back in high school that would always tell me, Mujahid, you have all these people around you right now. You could have 1 million friends right now, but good luck in 5 years after university or even during university if you even have 5 friends from high school. And I was like, no, Mr. Smith, you're completely wrong. All 30 of my friends in high school, my whole entire grade 12 class, we're going to be friends forever. Friends forever. That's what it was. It was like a Saved by the Bell episode. It was friends forever. That's what it was. But it's not, in reality, it's not.
Yeah.
And I think it's when I met my girlfriend, now wife at the time, back in university, she made me realize, because she cared for me in other ways that other people didn't, she made me realize how used I was being, or how people used me or abused me for my opinions, my thoughts, my car, or just saying yes to everything because they know people can rely on Mujahid all the time. But what was I doing for myself? What was I doing for my partner at the time? I was neglecting all that.
So while people are looking to use Mujahid, Mujahid's also getting fulfillment of, like, I'm important, right? And you had to, at some point in time, reconcile that in your head, saying that if I stop doing this, I lose that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
So you considered that, obviously, because that itself is like what the golden
because like
handcuff,
what he was speaking to before was a change in mindset, and that's not an easy thing to do. That it's a super easy thing to say and pass by, but that is a really difficult moment, is to change your mindset around things. So with your girlfriend, now wife, bringing awareness to her perception of how you were being used by people by saying yes all the time. So what was the mindset shift for you that had to take place to be able to recognize that, and then to do something about it? Because those are difficult steps, because like what Muhammad was saying, there's people who are not going to like it when we put boundaries in place, right? They want us to keep doing the things that we do for them, and sometimes we energetically or physically or financially or whatever, for whatever reason, we can't always give that or be everything to everyone all the time. So what was your experience like?
Also, let me add to that too, in the question here, Trina, is that even that though, even before you made that mindset, you did ask for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Forget
I
about like
completely
now making
yeah,
a change.
I completely take
A little
responsibility.
bit, but you wanted that.
Absolutely, and it's funny because again, my girlfriend, wife at the time, she's like, try it. She goes, let's have a friendly bet here. Say no for the first time to someone who can you consistently ask yes to, and see how long or how often they message you. You know, it's like that friendship test, right? Who's really your friend out there that's gonna you message someone? You know, some people might have that friend that you message after 6 months and you're still good friends. It doesn't matter how much time passes. Or message that person, or you have to message those person on a daily basis, right? So again, it became like that struggle. Like I had to maintain so many relationships. So going
But
back
then
to it, like my
that,
wife's like,
just before you did that though,
yeah,
you must have had the thought, okay, well, if I did this, and then what if I find out they're not all my friends? Or what if I find out that I'm actually not wanted? Like, did that
and that's the
thought
thing. That's
cross
that's
your
the
mind?
that's the trauma that takes you back to being a child again, right? It's that's what it was, and that's what exactly what happened. I said no. I started saying no to some people. I started putting myself and myself first for the first time, and I started
Yeah.
saying no to people, and people didn't like it.
Yeah.
People stopped talking to me.
Okay.
People just didn't want anything to do with me as a whole, just because I started saying no.
And that felt good.
It felt good that I was trying to get control over what I wanted in my life, but it felt horrible in a sense where I just started losing people and that sense of need.
Right.
And I was trying to lose that. So now I'm in a new position where I'm focusing on myself, which is great for my mental health, physical health too at the same time, and really focusing on people that actually care about me. But that sense of need is starting to leave. That sense of need or someone needing me is starting to leave, like tenfold. Like people were just dropping like flies because I wasn't available anymore, or I didn't say yes to everything, or I wanted to do this instead of what they were doing, right? And so you get back into that state where, am I all alone again? Am I
Mm.
that kid who is just going to be passed on? Am I that person that no one really wants to hang out with, care about, or anything like that? Have I become the second more than the first in everyone's eyes? You revert back to that. And I
Yeah.
find that's the weird part because, again, like you grow up thinking of the person you want to be, you get to that point. It's not necessarily that's the person you actually want to be because there's so much either consequences or rules behind being that type of person. And then when you actually want to be your true self, people might not like it.
So now people don't like your true self.
Some people don't like my true self. No. And they can go fly kites. I'm at that point. Right?
So you find you, but no, but that way you finally got there, like you just said. I think that's the interesting part is that that's precisely what you wanted to overcome the first time,
Yeah.
which made you become a yes person. And I think this is really important for many people to really like pause on and think about because it's the very same feeling that we're looking to bury, right? Of I kind of might not like who I am or don't feel my value. And then my value becomes now attached to how useful I am to others, right? And so now I go, I feel, okay, well, that's the value formula that you must have been using. Like it's based on how useful I am to others. And then up the useful to others, and my value goes up. And
Yeah.
now you're feeling very, very valuable, but then, you know, with some influence, you say, I'm gonna like take another route, and your usefulness to others goes down, and your value perception of yourself goes back down again. So all that time that you're a yes man, really your value wasn't going up, just your usefulness to others were. That's what you
Exactly.
discovered. Okay, so you discover this, and now you come back.
Sometimes it's a perception of value too,
Yeah.
right? You don't always see that these relationships are not necessarily giving back to you, right? So
Absolutely. And it's
So
I
you're
always
back
tell
to
people, look, I'm at a point where I'm exploring pretty much to say. I'm back at that exploratory phase. Because again, I don't like listening to human beings. I rather watch TV and movies that inspire me to make me realize, because it's so funny. My wife could tell me something one day. I could watch the same moral of what she was trying to get at. I could watch it in a movie and relate better than listening to her. And she always does this. She was like, see, I told you this. This is exactly what I told you. She goes, yeah, but you didn't explain it in such a way that this person did, right? It's always that type of thing. So right now, me as an individual,
for you.
yeah, me as an individual right now, this is me. I'm the type of person, if you know me from my past and you needed someone to talk to, you need some help, I will answer my phone and I will help to my best capacity. So if I can loan you $10, I'll loan you $10. If you're asking me for $5,000, sorry, I can't do that. You know, I'm measuring things out a lot better than I'm measuring things out better than I ever have. Let's just say, because
do you feel
now
better about yourself that you do that now?
I feel amazing that I do that now. Because I couldn't. The same relationship I have with someone since grade 4 is not the same relationship I have with someone I just met last week.
Right.
And I used to put everyone on the same spectrum sometimes. Everyone I met, everyone who knew me was important to me.
Had full access to everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. Exactly what I was. Whether it was, joining a new network of people, whether it was meeting someone who is a high-level executive at a company, everyone was important to me. And needless to say, like even in business, like the person who is like the warehouse worker to the CEO, like those two people should be important to some people, because without the warehouse worker, how does the CEO prosper? But without leadership from the CEO, how does the warehouse person prosper? And like now I'm trying to find that new balance where the relationships that I have are completely different. That person I have still best friends with, that I consider a brother since grade 4, is not the same person I met last week and I just had a great conversation with. I have to build new relationships. You know, in relationships, it's kind of like, testing one another. When you meet someone for the first time, at what level of respect do you have for that person to listen to them, to understand their full story, to want to get to know them? And there's some people who just don't give you a care in the world, and you don't have to put that person on a pedestal or on a level or on any spectrum. They're just a person that just passed by in your journey of life. Let's just say that's all they were. They were a passerby. That's it.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just trying to contain what you said, because there's a lot of knowledge there. So
I do apologize. I ramble a lot. So
it's not rambling. It's good. It's good. It's not rambling at all. It's so what I'm hearing is, as you've learned really your own worth, really, because this is about your self-worth and giving your time and energy and resources or whatever would that be to the relationships in your life. And what I'm hearing you say is you used to give everything to everyone all the time, but now you realize like these kind of foundational relationships, like your grade 4 friend is someone that does have access to the full gamut, but you're no longer just offering that to everyone else. And it seems like you're placing like, I guess boundaries might be a good word, like boundaries around your relationships. Then that way, like this relationship serves this purpose, and it's not all encompassing of my best friend, family member, professional resources, but they're going to just have access to this part of you, and you'll have access to this part of you. So then you're not so depleted. Does that make sense? Is that like what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you grow up, you're trying to figure out, you have to kind of categorize relationships. Like, what's a true acquaintance? What's a friend? What's a good
Right.
friend? What's a best friend? What's a colleague? You know, those type of things that people try to categorize, or you put people into different categories. Not in a bad sense, but in a sense where,
No,
like,
just to
how do you
conceptualize.
benefit from
Yeah.
relationships? Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, for instance, like, I must have a lot of people on LinkedIn as a network that I can reach out to. Do I talk to every single person on my LinkedIn network? No. Do I like every single thing that a person on LinkedIn posts? No. But if I needed someone that was in that specific field, I might not have talking to that person in years, but I know that they're part of a network that I can reach out to that, hey, how's it going? XYZ. I haven't talked to you in a while. Do you mind if you can help me out with this? And they're going to bluntly tell me yes or no. That's it. And I struggled with that. I struggled telling people no, or telling people like, no, I can't help you. Like, it's really going to hurt me, or it's not going to necessarily benefit me, but it's going to do something within me that I don't like.
You know what I think, actually, as you're talking about, what I think changed is not the yes or the no. I think what changed was the why. So, like, you know, when you think about when you said at first why you were doing it was because, you know, it gave you a sense of value.
Yeah.
But now why you do it is not because it has anything to do with value on you. It has to do with value on the other side. You yourself say, like, my friend from grade 4 is not the same person I just met last week. See, that's a why. Whereas before it was just as much as possible. Why? Because it gives me more value. In order for that to change, your perception, your sense of self-value had to change first. So what I'm curious to know is that when did that start changing? So you talked about
His wife
your
pointing it out. Yeah.
influence in you, but you know, so somebody else saw value in you that was that was exclusive of your usefulness to others, right? They saw that value, and then clearly somebody cared for you, right, deeply. So what I'm gathering from from just watching that experience is that you started realizing your value, and somebody had to tell you this. But even after somebody had to tell you this, you had to believe at some point in time that your value, your perception of your value is not just how useful you are to others.
So for me,
that's what I'm
yeah,
curious to know.
so
How did
that
you
started,
start formulating that or reformulating that?
I think, so halfway through university, I was being told, like, people were using you. And then I had to start reevaluating things. On the other side of the spectrum, I had major case of FOMO, like fear of missing out. Like, so I felt like by saying no to people, I wasn't going to get invited to certain places, and I was going to miss out on like great times, right? So those were a couple of factors that I had to consider. But slowly, like, people just started.
How did you how did you deal with that? What did you say to yourself? That's a real thing. Like, if I
It's
don't
a hard one, and getting over fear of missing out is not an easy
Yeah.
hurdle.
I
Yeah.
actually had to. I
Don't
had to
skip
like.
over that part.
Yeah, I had to really reevaluate like those times when I was a kid hanging out by myself, and had to realize, like, it's okay to hang out for yourself sometimes. It's okay to take time for yourself
Yeah.
and not have anyone around you. My wife worked retail. There was some times that she wasn't able to hang out. That's what it was. And I had to be alone. And I really had to be comfortable and in my alone time and being okay by myself, and not realizing that I needed 30 people around me at a given time.
So
That took a long time. That took a
so
long time to get used to.
so initially you were not okay with being alone.
Oh no, I was not okay with it. I consistently felt jittery. Like, well, what's going on? What am I doing? I would be on social media checking on every single person that I know, like, well, why wasn't I invited to that event? Did I do this to that person? Did I do that to that person? Did I say something wrong? I was literally having a crisis of like,
incredibly anxiety provoking.
Yeah, it's extremely. And that's the first time where I felt like, I think it's the first time I had a panic attack as well. And just realizing like.
You had a panic attack.
I think I had a panic attack because realizing that like, what am I doing? Is this what I really want? Is this really going to be my life? And having a panic attack that like, I'm not important. I'm not this. I'm not that. Like, again, like you set up this identity of who you are for such a long time, or how people, not necessarily identity, like how people perceive you for such a long time. And now all of a sudden it's flipped. It's different. And some people like change. Some people didn't like change. But at that time, I didn't like that change. And I had a panic attack for the first time.
There's this thing I read the other day about the difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And they said the difference between being alone and feeling loneliness changes with one simple little thing: loving the person you're alone with. And if you can love the person, if you can learn to love yourself and see your value in yourself, you can be alone, but you'll never be lonely.
Yeah.
And that's what seems to have started to happen, but it happened to you in it seems like it reversed. First you had to be alone and feel lonely. Then you had to go, I don't like this feeling, but I'm not gonna go that way. Like, it's not like it was a waste of time, because you did try a route, and you know, like, it's like you couldn't have trusted that was not real unless you had tried it. And now you can say, I tried it. I was a yes man. I was useful to a lot of people, but I had no real value of my own. And I can tell you that does not work. So then you don't go back to that. You don't relapse on it. You go, I got to do something else. Like, where I'm at right now sucks. I'm having a panic attack. I do feel lonely, but I'm not going to go that way. Right. Yeah. And then what did you do?
So I try to fill in the gaps, right? Like, my wife told me, like, well, what do you want to do that you haven't done in a long time by yourself? So now everyone has left you. Just pretend it's just me and you. Yeah, we're not together all the time. Of course, me and my wife, we have our separate lives too. We have work, whatever the case may be. But now there's no one to hang out with. Well, what do? Well, you try to find.
What did she say to you?
She goes, find things that you love to do again.
Yeah, by himself.
Yeah, by yourself. So funny enough, I started doing two things. One, I started cooking again. I love cooking, and I try to pick up new hobbies. I try to pick up new hobbies like sous videing or learning how to make dough, or just doing those type of things for myself. And funny enough, the other thing I started doing again,
like dough,
dough, like bread dough and pizza dough and everything. Yeah, there you go. Right.
It's a businessman, eh?
I just want to clarify for people. Like, don't make dough; it'll feel good.
Well, there you go. And the second thing I started doing was actually building Lego. I'm a huge Lego builder.
Stop! How old are you this time?
Oh, I actually bought a new set last week, so
you're still doing it.
Yeah, so I'm still doing it.
University now. This is like.
Yeah, like I was building Lego as a young kid, and then again I started back again in university as well. So,
but it's a very physical exercise, right? You have to be very present. You're very
you're in your zone. Like, how quickly can I build this thing? There's 5,000 pieces. Let's time it out, and you really you actually get to know yourself a lot when you're building Lego, and I'll tell you why. Because are you that person that opens the bags, dumps everything out, and just starts looking for the pieces, or are you that person who's organizing all the pieces and then starting to build? What type of person are you? Right? And it's so funny because, like, are you that person who's extremely organized, or are you the person who goes, well, let's find the way, that type of deal. And I was really taking like both approaches. I'm the find the way type of person. I like to open the bag, scatter all the pieces, not necessarily put all the like pieces together, but I like the search. That's how
This
I
is
like it.
amazing, hey, Trina. Like, somebody can say, find yourself, or somebody can say, go cook, go play with Lego, right? Like, I mean, that's to me the big
Well,
discovery
it's
here.
reconnecting, and I feel like you and I have both done this. Like when I'm hearing his story, I went through a very similar experience, and so part of mine was that inability to be alone and inability to literally stop moving, and always needing to feel productive. I became an absolute workaholic, absolute workaholic. If I didn't have my children, I was working all the time, and when I started to put the boundaries in place too, the same as you, people do disappear in a major way. And it's incredibly uncomfortable. But then now you switch to a point where you reconnect with yourself. So I started swimming, and I remember you saying you started back with Taekwondo, and you start appreciating yourself more. And now I just had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. She's like, Trina, you need to come around. You need people. You need to be around people more and social. And she's a very extroverted social person. I'm like, I need a fourth of the cup of social interaction you need to be able to carry myself. Like I'm actually at a point where I'm like, man, I got 4 days to myself. This is amazing. And I'm totally okay. I don't need to talk to anyone or see anyone, but everyone has their own, we all need to be alone, and we all need to be with people. Like we're social creatures, but all of us have our own balance within it for what we need to fill our own cup and then to help others. And I think that's really the essence of what you're talking about here is we've all fallen off this path, but come back to it, right?
It's more so like I said, it's a balancing act too, right? For me,
Yeah.
like during COVID, I don't like working from home. I hate it. Like I like that social interaction in terms of a work environment more than anything else. But then again, on the end of the spectrum, like that's work. And after
Right.
work, if I'm by myself doing nothing, I'm okay with that now. Like I'm
So
happy to do that.
you started before you can learn to like yourself. You got to learn about yourself first. Like you can't get to the liking until you get to the knowing first.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. And now I have a little daughter now too, right? So now it's like it's weird because now like you'd always want the best for your kids, right? So you try to instill like she's young. Like I'm trying to play Lego with her. It's not working out. She's just throwing all the blocks. But it's like wow. It's like okay, now I have a new role to fill my time with. Am I getting a new sense of want and need, like being valued? Yeah, I am. I'm getting that point because that's my kid and she does need me all the time, right? Or spending more time with my wife now more than anything else because they need me. That's my family, or just trying to plan something with friends that I haven't seen in a long time because they actually want to meet up. It's
Yeah.
these new things that are coming about that are actually bettering myself and making me feel like this is who I'm supposed to be as an individual. Maybe I'm really trying to find myself now and do these type of things.
Well, I'd love to go back to that breakthroughs part that you were at, because I think all of that leads to this, right? And when you started doing the cooking and the Lego and making dough, I mean, I love that. That's so that just tells you how many different ways there are for people to do it, and you lined it up with what you were interested in. And I like what you said. I think it's either your wife said it or you said it, where go back to doing that. It was like we got away from something, and then we go back to doing it again. And then there's that discovery of the self. And then you're like, hey, I'm not actually such a bad person, and I actually don't need a lot of people to find me useful to them. Do you have that?
Yeah.
Like, when did that start actually happening? When did that start happening as a thought? Did that
I
actually
would
happen as an actual conscious thought?
So it started happening, like I said.
And then it started leading you to saying no, right? Like not having to say yes all the time, right?
So starting to say no to people happened midway through university, and it didn't happen with like a lot of people. It just started happening with like it was like bunches at a time, right? It's getting to realize like who's really, yeah, it's a process of elimination. Like
I agree with you. I know what you mean.
right? So I would say like this process, what year is it? 2022. This process has been like anywhere between past 8 to 5 years has really started, right? And imagine like it's still a process like anything else, right? I'm still going through the motions and whatnot too. But 8 years ago, I can honestly say is when I started saying no to people. And then within the last 5 years, I've really been able to realize what I want out of life, start focusing on myself more in that regard. And whoever wants to join me along my journey or along the way, come right on board. That's my mindset. It's like the warrior's way, like Mujahid means warrior, right? So I always take that warrior culture very seriously. Like growing up, it could have been like the lone wolf. And then later on, it was leading the pack. And now it's more so, now I'm starting a new journey. And, along the journey, you see those, remember that movie, The Princess Bride, right? Like along the way, you'll pick up stragglers that like you for your company, that like you for who you are, or look up to you for who you are, and they want to help you along the journey, as opposed to just being a person that just pops up whenever they want to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in that stage right now, that come join me, follow along the fellowship, that's what it is. And those are the relationships that I'm building now that have been more meaningful than anything else in my life prior to.
When you were going to that part where you're discovering the person, you like the person who you're discovering, what did you find out that you liked about yourself? Because when you first started, you talked about how I'm on the big end of the spectrum, I'm second, I'm this, I'm that. Nothing that you would say that you liked about yourself. Now you're starting to like yourself. So what did you start liking about yourself? Why are you so likable, Mujahid?
I'm happy. One thing I
think you're so likable.
One thing I like about myself still is that my voice, right? I have a loud voice. And that's one thing that when I made that change as a child, I never lost. I like to make sure I'm heard. I like to make sure that I can still carry a room, tell a good joke, be out there, be someone that people want to listen to. I'm happy. That's one of the main things I love about myself, that people actually want to listen to me. And whether that's something that I changed as a child, and even though I say no to people, or even though there's that switch in me that I'm doing things differently, that one aspect has never left, which is amazing for me. That I love about myself, that people still want to listen to what I have to say, right? I said it before, like I've been through so many experiences that I would want people to listen to or want people to hear, right? And so like I say, life's a story, and it's all about being a good storyteller. But how do you compel people, right? I never listen to my wife or my partner telling me what's good and what's not. I like to watch like movies and sitcoms and cartoons to get the message across to me. Like, so how can I be as animated to people or as influential to people as possible that they will want to listen to what I have to say? So that's one thing I love about myself now that I never necessarily liked before, or not necessarily liked before. I never really realized my power in that regard. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm okay.
Oh my gosh, this is
amazing. There's more. There's more than that, right? There's at least two. There's always has to be at least two things. I always like things in two, right? What I love about myself now is I'm comfortable in my own skin. Like I got confidence when I was younger to put myself out there, and now I'm more confident in myself that I like the way I look. Like, yeah, there's obviously I can work out more, I can lose a little bit of weight, I can be healthier. Those are good things that I myself are looking forward to do, and I've done it before and I can do it again. But I'm happy in my own skin. I don't have to be ripped. I don't have to be chiseled. I don't have to look a certain way, or I can grow a big beard and I'm okay with it. Or I don't have to have a bald head. I'm okay with long hair. Like, I'm okay with being in my own skin. I'm confident in who I am as what I look like and what I put out there.
That's interesting because that's the very thing that might get people to call you in the first place.
Yeah.
But instead of now you attributing value to them calling you, you're just sticking with the value itself, which is what you have.
You
And
hit the nail on the coffin right there. It's the value itself, right? It's not necessarily feeling valuable, but I know I have value to give. Forget about feeling valuable, right? It's
and that doesn't
aspect.
change.
It doesn't change.
And that doesn't change. And it's not
that doesn't
The
change.
value is always there. Yeah.
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 That's the
So
beauty.
that's a huge breakthrough, man. Like to have that, because once you have that, then like what's going to stop Mujahid?
Yeah.
You're a warrior, man.
It's funny because like I was unstoppable. I felt unstoppable before, but now I feel indestructible now. How about that? Right? Just a new mindset.
That I love where you're at today, and I think where you're at today speaks a lot to like what you've gone through, right? But what's interesting is that you could feel, and it's even harder sometimes for people like you because you might start off feeling really, really strong. And for those who feel really, really strong, who go through that, it's a higher fall, right? Like if somebody didn't feel strong to begin with, okay, so you're not wanted. It's okay, right? But if somebody's really feeling strong and that person falls further, right? And then to get up from that point is even harder to get back. So the breakthroughs are even harder because the breakdown is even more intense. And really, that's really, I think, like what the blessing for you has been is that, while the fall down was there, you did get back up, you did move up, you did have somebody to support. And I think, if you were to say something to somebody who felt strong once, who doesn't feel strong anymore, like who feel like they lost their strength, where would you tell that person to look, and how would you tell that person to find it?
I'll tell the person, give me a call first. I can help you. Number one, but
hey, get help. Yeah, right. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, call me, right? But for someone who's going through the fall down,
like, sometimes it happens at a time of the night. When you're completely alone, and it happens when you're at your lowest point. We're at our lowest point. There is no access at that point in time.
No.
What do you say then?
To that person, it's a hard question to answer. I'll tell you that much, because sometimes you want to say like, it will get better when it doesn't necessarily get better right away, right? It's always, do you want to hear time heals all? Do you want to hear get back up and climb up that mountain again, right? Do you want to hear any inspirational quote or anything motivational? No. Like you can say so many things, but what's going to relate to that person? So that to that person, I'll tell them like, whatever makes you happy, build upon it. If building Lego makes you happy, build upon it. If taking walks makes you happy, take more walks to build yourself back up. If you have a passion for working out, if you have a passion for anything and you don't like your job or whatever, focus on some of the passionate things that you like to get yourself to a happier place and to explore yourself more. That's the best way I can describe it.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other piece too is it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, I think that's where we have the growth, right? Like when you circling back to like the part you were talking about when your wife was working and you're home by yourself, that was so uncomfortable for you.
Yes.
So uncomfortable. And rather than trying to get yourself out of the comfort by, getting yourself busy or going and socializing or helping someone, you sat with it. So when we have the capacity to sit with the discomfort, look at what it opens up to you. Like you said, like time heals all. That's where that comes from. That discomfort is no longer there for you. Time has healed that, right? So yeah, I think they're all things we've all gone through, right?
And again, it exactly, like, people do go through these things. And like I said, like you can pull out any inspirational thing, like, but what's going to stick? Right. That's the thing. Like, what's going to stick with a human, like with an individual? For me, it could be time heal all. Mohammed, for you, it could be get back up there. Trina, for you, it could be pursue, like go forth and live prosperous. You know what I'm trying to say? Like everyone is different in that regard. And again, everyone has their own fall down moments. Everyone has their own journey, but everyone has something that makes them happy, right?
Mhm.
So everyone should focus on whatever makes them happy at the end of the day
And
to
everyone is
increase
a
that.
person of value too, right? Like
Yeah.
your value, part of your journey, I think, is rediscovering your value and really knowing your value.
So
Yeah.
let me ask you this then. You said go back to find your passion or go back to. You keep saying go back to. So what I wonder is, what got you away from it in the first place? Why did you stop? Well, like if something's working and you're a kid, you're happy, you know your value, what got you away from it in your case?
I think being that yes person really took away from a lot of things that I may have wanted to do or previous passions that I wanted to pursue. I just maybe lost myself in that place, right? Of being that yes man, leaving those certain things behind. Not really, people around me at the time weren't necessarily interested in those type of things. So I left those interests behind, for example. And it's so funny because you go through you go through social media, you see people talk about things now that really affected them back in the day. It's, back in high school, I never really talked about like Power Rangers or comic books or anything like that too. And I found out like 3 people that I grew up with in high school, they were super into like geeky things like me. And it's like, well, why didn't we ever talk about this? Right? Because it wasn't cool, or it wasn't the thing to do, or it wasn't the thing to say, or whatever the case may be. Right. And maybe I put other people's passions before mine because I felt that if I was putting myself in their passions, then again, my value is up. My value is up for people that I can be that person, and it didn't matter.
And now,
So again,
do you now feel like after going through this, you now have even more to offer?
oh, 1,000,000%.
In
A
what way?
1,000,000%. I feel like I can tell people, don't lose that passion, like your own passions. Don't necessarily follow the pack all the time. Don't be a yes man to everything that someone else is doing. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to evaluate what's important. It's okay to, yes, of course, say yes to opportunity. Say yes to new things that are scary in that sense, right? It's like that classic movie, Yes Man with Jim Carrey, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
you say yes to everything, but it's to understand that the one you can say no is okay because you're uncomfortable with it, or you don't want to do it because it is not going to benefit you or value you in any way possible. It's okay to say no, right? That's what I would tell people. It's okay to say no. It's okay to follow your own passions. It's fine. It's not, there's nothing wrong with it at all. If you like Power Rangers at the age of 32, it's fine. It's totally okay. There's a lot of people out there that like it.
Friends,
Yeah,
when I
thank gosh. I was about that.
there's more of that.
32 passed a long time ago. But I like what you said about evaluating and not just saying yes.
Yeah,
I think that's an important takeaway for a lot of us.
yeah, sure.
Because we found it, and it's so like it's like poetic actually, because we find sometimes value in saying yes, but we get value in evaluating, not just saying yes. That's the point of evaluating, right? To understand the value of the move, and it's not to say that just do things out of only self-serving interests. That's not what you mean either. Like take care of people, sure. Be a contributor, be generous, right? But evaluate, like you have limited time in a day, you have limited energy, you got to take care of yourself, you got to put value on that. And I always say, like, I'm a package deal, guys. Like I got to take care of me, and then once I'm done with that, I'm a better me to give to you too.
Yeah,
we all win.
And the thing I've noticed too in working like just in projects with people, and so when you're pulled into like an opportunity, you see this in business, I'm sure too, where I'm asked to do something and they have this vision of what my role is going to be. And, I say, these are the things I'm saying yes to, because this is what works for me. And this is what I know I can sign up for. But these are the reasons why I'm saying no to these things and why I feel they don't work for me in this situation. And what I have come to learn is when we're able to evaluate what to say yes to and express that, it opens up opportunities for creation that wasn't there before. Because I know when I've done this recently, they were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't see this," and then it just made the project better because I was looking at something that didn't work in my hypothesized role, but it actually had a bigger impact into the project itself. So you never know what's going to come out of these things, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and what it invites in different ways.
But isn't that funny too, that you're not the one who's necessarily started the project, you were brought onto the project, right?
Right.
But you're this new outside perspective saying that, hey guys, this is what's happening, this is what could work, cannot work, and anything too. And people value that, right? So for me, I never looked at it in a sense where I had to listen to an outside perspective to really look inwards towards myself as a project as well.
Yeah.
I get that. That's cool. So that's amazing, Mujahid, because I think that's the stuff under the surface with you that I think is very, very meaningful to people to hear. That you can, some people, they feel like they start at a low point and then they go like this. In your case, you started at a high point, you went down, and then you're coming back, and you're coming back even better than ever.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel, though, even now, that you are still at risk or vulnerable in some ways? Do you feel that? Like, you talked about being indestructible, but is there, maybe there's nothing, but do you feel that if you're not careful or cognizant or mindful, that you do, that you might be at risk, that you might be vulnerable if you're not vigilant?
You're not going to please everyone. I think that's the thing I'm still not necessarily, I'm still maybe struggling with is the people pleasing sometimes. Like the people who really do matter, right? Whether it's your family, whether it's your coworkers, whether it's your boss, right? That sometimes it's okay to not please everyone around you. Not everything is going to fit perfectly in this puzzle, right? It's not going to happen. So yeah, again, I'm human as well. I have emotions, right? So yeah, when I say I feel indestructible, I do feel indestructible in a sense where I know who I am as an individual to pursue forward. But if something hurts my feelings, am I going to have a good cry out of it? Yeah, I probably will. If something bothers me, am I going to tell that person that this is really not working for me? I will. And it's really, again, using my voice. If people want to listen, they'll listen because they'll value me, right? If people don't want to listen, then maybe that's not value to me as well, to those type of relationships that I have.
I love that. Hey, Trina, a guy who has something to say found his voice.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
Right? Like that's I think what I'm getting out of this really is that once you find your voice, you're able to also find yourself, and your voice is a reflection of yourself. You can, there's a lot to like there. And regardless of, any other perception of value in terms of your usefulness to others. And then only after that point can you really feel like you're then able to contribute something, and you do it on your terms. I think that's an amazing journey, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
It's great to have you come out here, join us. Like I said, knowing you all these years, nobody would have guessed that you've gone through this sort of thing. And like you said, maybe you're just this big, strong looking, burly looking guy that has how does this guy have any feelings, but there you are. So it's really something that I appreciated knowing more about you today, man. And
I appreciate you letting me come on here and share my story. It's funny you say that. It's a perception, right? I'm the friendly giant.
Yeah.
That people look at, right?
I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.